Welcome to the Heart of CIRS podcast. I'm your hostess, Melanie Joy Pensack, here to share heartfelt conversations with folks recovering from CIRS and with those special people serving the CIRS community. The podcast was created to help bring awareness to the physical, emotional, and mental experiences of folks navigating CIRS day to day. The world needs to know what CIRS folks go through for deeper empathy and understanding. Through stories and vulnerability, we can help the world understand the winding journey of CIRS recovery. Thank you for being here to open your mind and to open your heart. I am very happy to be in conversation today with a friend of mine who is going through CIRS recovery. He is somebody that I have met through the CIRS Healing Collective, which started and is run by Jenny Johnson. You can find out more information about how to join that Healing Collective group if you want to on survivingmold.com. But this person and I have become friends. It's been really great to connect with him and to support one another as we go through the CIRS recovery. And so I'm really excited to be in conversation with you today. And I just wanted to say, too, that I always appreciate how you hold a sense of humor during your recovery process. And you're an awesome cheerleader, very supportive of everyone and really genuine in your support. So just want to start off saying I appreciate your positivity in the midst of all of the CIRS challenges.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
So we won't go into every detail regarding the CIRS journey and recovery process for you, but I think it would be interesting for folks to hear a little bit about how you think you got sick and also how you and your wife started to notice, because I understand that your wife is also recovering from CIRS.
Yeah, definitely. I'll try to keep it somewhat brief, but I'm 32 years old and it's hard to know for sure, but just growing up I would have the hardest time remembering anything. I just cheated my way through school and high school, and I just felt like I always had such a hard time remembering anything, but I was always really physically active. And then when I got into college, it was just way more intense and I was having a hard time because I just knew I had such a hard time in school previously. It's hard to know for sure, but if I had a guess, this is what started it. I started taking Adderall from a friend at school. He had some, and of course, it worked really well in the beginning. And then I would plateau and I wouldn't feel that, I guess it's kind of like a high from it. And I just started taking more and more, and I felt awful from it. And I just got tunnel vision, and I should have just stopped taking it. But then I went to a doctor and I got a prescription for it. I told her I felt awful because of it. So then she gave me an antidepressant, and it was just like meds started stacking up. And I was still in school and I was losing weight. I would normally weigh like 180. I got down to 140. And if I had to guess, I just stressed my nervous system out so much. And then we moved into an apartment and I finally got off all the medication. It took like over a year just to slowly wean off of it. And I felt so bad. And then for years after, I just felt so bad and I could not figure it out. The mood swings, the fatigue, just the suicidal thoughts were just so extreme. And I would just get like these crazy, just feelings of rage throughout the day. And just trying to figure it out, going to doctors, I would get crazy headaches. And then I was watching a YouTube video and it was just a doctor. I think I was having the mood swings were just so intense. And I was just typing in like mood swings on YouTube. And then there was a doctor talking about mold exposure, mood swings. And that's when it clicked. And that's when I started looking into doctors that worked with CIRS.
Wow, I'm so sorry that you went through years of suffering around that before getting to the point of CIRS, but I'm glad that you finally got to that place.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's really interesting, I think, that there were it sounds like you're pointing to signs as a young one that maybe you were having reactions to water damage buildings when you were younger or in college. Do you think that there were environments that you were in that were unhealthy?
Oh yeah, 100%. I remember I talked to my mom when this all started, but she's, oh yeah, the house we grew up in, there was a couple big floods there, and then the house that we moved to after, there was a ton of water damage. I honestly think I've been in water damaged buildings my whole life. So I think just all built up and then it finally broke.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you eventually met your wife, got
Mm.
married, moved into a house, and I think it would be really interesting to, yeah, hear a little bit about that experience. Do you have a suspicion that your wife developed CIRS in your house, or do you feel like she maybe had it prior as well? Because I know she's experiencing the CIRS challenges too.
I feel bad saying this, but it's not as extreme as mine, but it still has to suck so bad. Her main thing is fatigue. She's been tired like her whole life, and the house she grew up in has had water damage for sure. I think, and she says if it wasn't for me, she would have never looked into it more for herself. So that's nice that she's working with the same doctor I am. And but yes, her main thing is she could just sleep all day. She doesn't have that get up and go. So it will be really nice in the future to see her with some energy one day.
Wow. So there's two people that grew up in water damaged environments, had exposures maybe across their life, come together, and then you're in this house that you're living in that you finally realized had water damage as well. I think it's going to be really interesting for people to hear about how you finally realized that your home was experiencing water damage, because I know you were on the hunt for what the possible source could be for quite some time. And
Yeah.
just to set it up a little bit for people, you were living in a state that's traditionally very dry. Then there were unexpected rains in that environment for longer than would be typical. And can you share a little bit about the plug and the water and how you found out what was happening in your house?
Yeah, of course. So we bought a brand new home and it was in a development and kind of like quick builds, put out really quick. And I had CIRS at the time. Still, it was really bad still. And we moved in, and I was working with our the doctor was still working with currently, and we did an ERMI. And it's all just been, of course, for everyone, just such a big learning experience. It was a 2-story house, so we did just one ERMI throughout the whole house, and it came back super good. It was in a negative, actually. It was like -2 or something. We sent that ERMI to our doctor, and yeah, it's really good, but Stachybotrys, which is a lot of people know about that. That one has to be wet all the time, a constant leak for Stachybotrys to grow. It needs moisture all the time. And that was, I think it was it scored a 2. So it was low, but at the same time, it shouldn't be there. And then I was like, no, you could write it off because you just want to keep moving forward. And I was like, oh, like our score's a negative. So I don't know. She's like, I don't feel comfortable about it. So she recommended we reach out to Bill Weber, and he was just a really good fit for us. And we worked with him virtually. We couldn't afford to have him drive to us, and it was just way too expensive. So he suggested we do an ERMI outside. So we took samples from the windows because you don't want to have any rust on your samples. So the windows were just a good easy swipe. So we swiped all sides of our house, the windows. And then we did, I forgot, he recommends, I think it was, everyone's different, but he recommended, I think, an ERMI every, was maybe 500 feet or something like that. So we did an ERMI downstairs, two ERMIs upstairs, and one in the attic. And of course, it finally came back with a much bigger problem. I think our stacking on the first floor was where we did the one ERMI came back at a score of 30. And when we just did that one ERMI in the house, it came back as a 2 because it was not just in that one location. So, anyways, we were now trying to figure out where it was coming from. Could we fix it? Our house was only a few years old at the time, and he recommended some other tests we could do. So we did those, all coming back normal. And it just got to the point where he said, there's obviously a problem there. And it's so cool because the different types of molds, that's why I think it's really important to, we did the test ourselves before working with Bill and we got a negative score and we're like, we're good. But I think it's really important to have a professional, and everyone thinks differently, but just from what I've learned, to have a professional look at your ERMI because different types of molds means different things. And our score is a -2, but there was still a red flag. And for him to be able to piece it together, okay, this mold likes to be in a warm environment, so it's probably on this side of your house facing the sun, or it was just crazy.
Wow.
And yeah. And then it got to the point where he said, I don't know where else to look. The next point is for me to come out there, but it was going to be a ton of money. So we were just thinking, and we had a crazy wet winter. And one day I was going to blow dry my dog and I was getting ready to put the blow dryer into the outlet. And I noticed like something shiny under the outlet. And it wasn't like gushing water, but there were like drips of water coming out of our outlets on our second floor. And dude, it just like, it felt so good. I'm like, Jess, water. What? I'm like, water outlets. And we finally figured it out. Long story short, there was just, there was a, a building defect. They put them up so quickly and we had it remediated and were able to sell it. And that's our story with the whole house.
Wow. So what were you and just thinking when there was water in there? Were you excited? Were you annoyed? Were you happy you finally figured it out? What was that like?
I would say more happy just because, gosh, we spend so much money. Everyone spends so much money with CIRS, with Bill. He's almost 400 an hour and our brand new house. And it's just crazy. For sure, more happy. But then you start to think about it and it's frustrating and it's scary. It's like, how are we going to get out from underneath this thing? But definitely more thankful we just finally figured it out.
Yeah, it had to be so validating, I bet, to figure out
Yeah,
yours finally after all that time.
for
And it's also really frustrating and to think if there hadn't been that rain and that
sure.
like wet season,
Hmm.
that would break my heart to think that you would still be there trying to figure it out. Like where
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we would be, or we'd have to pay like, I think it was going to be like $8,000 to have him drive out to us. It would have taken a long time for us to get to where we're at, and then put him up in a hotel. And he's expensive. It's worth it, 100%. But yeah, so thankful for that rain for sure.
and it sounds like you're transitioning into a different type of living environment at this point, and you made a decision to buy a trailer.
Yeah, we did. So we once that house was, we actually knew how bad it was, and I started feeling much worse. Like my mood swings were getting way worse. And then Jess, she was actually like, "Oh, my chest is starting to feel tight and like kind of this anxiety." So she talked to her mom, and her mom was like, "Come live with us." No, she's just so nice, and her mom and dad. So we started living with her parents, and so thankful, but we were like crammed in one room and it was just hard to live out of room in a suitcase. We got over it pretty quickly. And then their house, that's the one Jess grew up in, has water damage as well. And right when I walk in there, I just have a hard time speaking and thinking. So I've been sleeping in the car. We have a Honda Civic. And gosh, everyone's like, how can you do that? It sounds horrible. But oh my gosh, I sleep 1,000 times better in like the trunk slash backseat of a Honda Civic than I do in the moldy house.
Yeah.
So it is worth it. But we wanted to get out of that room. And I've been mentioning for a while, gosh, it'd be nice just to get a little trailer. And we finally started looking into it and we just purchased it's an ATC is the manufacturer and they're built out of aluminum. And a lot of people that have CIRS, there's actually a Facebook group that's been helpful, but a lot of people have done pretty well in them. So we bought one of those. It's all aluminum, and then the insulation doesn't have paper backing, and then there's no wood or cardboard. So we looked into it, thought about it for a while, and we finally pulled the trigger, and we've had it for about, man, maybe not even a month so far.
Wow. So do you have to consider things like, am I allowed to put a trailer in my backyard? Do you have to check
Oh,
with like local people or is it something you can just do?
yeah, good question. So where her parents live, it's like a little farm town. I don't think there is really a restriction against having a trailer in your yard. We snuck our trailer in their backyard so people can't really see it, but they're definitely not as strict as like living in it's like a nicer development or something like that.
Yeah. And how do you manage setting up water and toilet needs and how does that all work with sewage and whatnot?
Yeah, good question again. So as everyone knows with CIRS, it's just so hard to get things done, and we've been just slowly learning. Let's see. For I believe it's the black tank, which is the one that would go to their septic tank. So like all the waste, you could we could her parents have a septic tank, so we could hook it up to that. We haven't yet. We just been using their restroom inside. And if they didn't have a septic tank, I'm not sure. I think you'd maybe have to drive it somewhere and have it dumped or dump it, I believe. But it's just still, we have so much to learn. And then the electrical,
Mm.
we aren't even all the way 100% set up yet. We're living in it, but we have just some extension cords going from her parents' house to like run my wife's work computer inside the trailer. And our next step is getting a couple adapters. So I believe it's a 50 it's a 50 amp plug. I mean, that's probably what makes sense to a lot of people, but it's a 50 amp plug, and a regular house plug is way too small. So you can run adapters that go that connect to the 50, and then they break it down to they break it down to a plug that you can plug into the house. So we would then have power to all of our outlets on the trailer, but it wouldn't be enough power to run the AC. And
Mm.
to do that, we would have to have an electrician come out and install a 50 amp plug so we could hook the 50 amp um, extension or the cord from the trailer.
That's so
Like,
interesting because I have no knowledge on any of that at all.
yeah,
It's like, how do you even begin? So it sounds like if you have a septic tank option already, there's a way to hook it up. There's
yeah,
ways to set up the electricity and then to do it more professionally.
yeah.
And what about water? How do you connect to water?
Oh yeah, water is super easy. You would just run. You get like a special hose, like a drinking hose from a Amazon or an RV source, so it doesn't have all those I think chemicals or something. But you just run water from the house, and then you put a little filter on it, and then just hook it up to the trailer. So that one's actually a lot easier than the hooking up to septic or the electrical.
Great. So have
Yeah.
you and your wife noticed any changes yet with sleeping or is it too early to tell?
I've noticed with her, her energy has seemed better. Gosh, still such a long ways for us to go, but her energy seemed better, and then her mood has seemed definitely better. And nothing's perfect. It off gases. They say there's minimal to none, but I think someone that's as sensitive as I am, I notice a little off gassing. I think it does mess with me a little bit, but also I'm really sensitive to when people have like fires. So I've been, gosh, there's just, I don't know what neighbor it is, but someone keeps having freaking fires at night and it messes me up so bad. So I've still been sometimes sleeping in my car and I'll just drive down the road and park somewhere where I don't smell smoke.
Yeah.
So it's not, oh, I bought a trailer and everything's perfect and I'm feeling so much better. Gosh, there's still hurdles and hoops to jump through.
Yeah, I feel like that's something that's really important to highlight, that
Yeah.
none of these options are perfect, but you work your way through them and adapt as you go along, really, because you can't
Yeah.
always predict what's gonna be a trigger. And sometimes it's different from day to day.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
It's so crazy.
to learn to be adaptive and to roll with it. I'm glad that you have stepped into that and that you and
Yeah.
your wife are exploring that journey together. What's it like to how do you support one another through the process?
It's, it's definitely, I think maybe just in our situation, it's easier that we both have CIRS just because when I don't want to get out of bed, she gets it. When I have the mood swings, she gets it. Or when she's laying in bed and she just has no energy, I get it. It would be hard being with someone. Sometimes we tell someone, "Hey, she's freaking tired," and someone will be like, "Just go exercise or do something and you'll feel better." It's so hard to explain CIRS to someone. Man, it literally feels impossible sometimes to do stuff. You have a huge list to do, and sometimes just getting up and taking a shower is it's a win, but at the same time, it's so frustrating.
I completely understand. There is this meme I think I saw on Instagram somewhere that said, "My fatigue is not the same as your tired."
Yeah.
I think that's a really important piece to highlight for people in the world who don't have CIRS, that fatigue is a significantly different experience than just if I take a nap for an
Mhm,
hour, I'm gonna feel better and be able to get through the rest of my day.
mhm.
Fatigue is really it impairs your ability to move your muscles and
Yeah.
do basic daily functions, and sometimes you are weighing out, "Yeah, am I gonna take a shower today, or am I gonna
Mhm.
clean up my food today?"
Yeah.
Or you really have to sometimes make decisions like that, and I think that's a really beautiful thing to point out to all the people listening that don't know what CIRS is, and it's really not helpful just to take a nap or
Uh,
to rest for a couple days. I think everyone has that experience of you have the flu and maybe even you're sick for a week, and
mhm.
then you're better. Your energy
Yeah.
comes back, and the turnaround time is not the same because of all the mechanisms that are so complex in our body. And
Yeah.
yeah, that kind of brings me to the next question is, what do you wish people in the world knew about CIRS? Those that don't have CIRS, what do you wish that they knew about the illness?
I always think it'd be so cool if you could just put someone in your shoes, like, real quick, just, "Okay, here, you're gonna be in my body and my mind, and this is how I feel." And gosh, it would be so much easier, but I just wish people knew that it's real and it's hell. That's the best. I just wish people knew that. It's like I don't even tell people what I've gone through, except people that I know understand it. Because most people they they just don't understand, and I feel like it's a sometimes just a waste of time.
I hope that is something that this podcast does is start to shed some light on what the day-to-day experiences are for
Yeah.
people like us going through this, the decisions we have to make, the level of fatigue that we feel, the ongoing awareness of exposures that we have to really consider on a daily basis. That the more people know about that, I think that there can be more empathy and more understanding. But if people don't understand that, it's really hard for them, as you're saying, to be able to wrap their head around it.
Yeah, I was talking to one person, and Jess was trying to describe it to him, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I know what that's like. Have you ever worked night shift before?" I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like, dude, he this person was comparing working a night shift for work to CIRS." I'm just like, "Oh, like, enough. Like, we are not this is not even worth attempting to describe it." So, yeah, it's tough.
If you could have one magic wish granted, what would you ask for to happen within the CIRS community?
This is a hard one. I was just talking to Jess about it, but I just I wish people could feel better faster. I've been this is maybe 7, 8 years for me, and it's a long time, but I know there's people on the CIRS collective, and they've been going through it for 30, 40 years. It's freaking hard. Not just not feeling like yourself, like your personality is gone.
Yeah, I love that. I think you're pointing to preventative care as something that could really impact people profoundly. If
Yeah,
this was identified much earlier on, if there
right.
were more doctors that were aware of this as an illness, then
Mm,
they would be pointing it out faster. If there were more functional doctors aware of this, they would be pointing it out faster. If
mhm,
if we had an ICD-10 code, a diagnostic
mhm,
code, then
mhm,
would probably get more exposure. And
right.
and we know that this is genetic, that
Mm,
20 to 25% of the population has the genetic predisposition for this illness. And if we were testing the genetics at a much younger age, think about what that would mean for children and schools and colleges and living environments, how much of this could be prevented.
yeah, definitely. And then same with the buildings and all of that. They build them so fast, and then we had such a wet winter in places, just the wood framings up, they get soaked, and then they just keep going, and they're putting drywall on, and people people just don't understand yet how much mold can mess someone up. And then I believe I did get the gene from my mom. We tested her as well, and she's been really ill her whole life, and 99% it's CIRS, but she's just been going to the regular doctors, and they give her antidepressant meds, they give her pain meds, they give her fibromyalgia meds. She's on all these meds, and does she feel better? Yeah, maybe a tiny bit, but nowhere to where she should. And if doctors knew more about it, it'd be such a different story.
Yeah, I'm sorry your mom is going through that. It's unfortunately so common that
Yeah,
that she's going through too.
yeah.
My last question for you is really what keeps you hopeful day to day despite all the challenges? You have a lot of positivity and I'm curious, how do you keep going?
I I just picture and think about just when I was at my complete worst, and I picture beating this thing and feeling better, and Jess and I feeling better and being able to go places and eat things, and I just want to come out on the other side, and I just feel like it'd be such a big not upset, but just gosh, I feel like the odds are really against me. And then also being able to help my mom, that's that really keeps me going too. Just my mom and Jess.
Yeah. You have such a big heart, and I'm sure that they appreciate all of the effort that you put in to learning about the illness, and healing yourself is going to have ripple effects for both of them, no doubt. It may take time, but I'm sure that they will feel the benefits of your health, and the information that you continue to seek is going to impact them as well. So, kudos for you for doing all of that, and thank you so much for being here today and really sharing openly about your housing situation and transitioning to a trailer and what it's like for you and your wife. I think these are all really day-to-day things that are going to impact people and get them thinking. And thanks for sharing your heart. And big hugs. Much appreciation to you, friend.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening and for your kind attention. To keep in touch, follow the Heart of CIRS podcast on Instagram. You can visit melaniepensack.com/the Heart of CIRS to donate. Your generosity helps to keep this podcast growing. May the awareness of CIRS spread far and wide, helping to change millions of lives for the better.